I'ma keep it a beanbag. Not only is 2025 the horror genre's takeover of the box office and streaming platforms, it's also the year that boiled over with dope Stephen King adaptations. I mean, either they're dropping this year or they're still in development, but Stephen King's material is hot this year. The Monkey, The Institute, The Long Walk, The Running Man, The Life of Chuck, and over 15 more that are either filming or in development. This evening, we're going to be discussing the trailer for It, Welcome to Derry. We're going to dig into some of the esoteric lore, and I think we're going to get properly tuned in for the Welcome to Derry series. But before we do all of that, I want to thank you all for tuning in. And if you're new to Real Enigmas and Theories, welcome. We're going to be talking about the trailer, the 2017 and 2019 movies if you haven't seen them. So hit that hype button if you're hype about Welcome to Derry, and without further ado, let's cook. We're going to get into the trailer breakdown, but I think it's fair to clear up a few things for some of those who don't know. This series will be an expansion of the 2017-2019 films where the timeline for the Losers Club was pushed forward to the 80s. So this isn't a remake or a retelling of Stephen King's novel or the 1990 ABC miniseries. The new series moves backwards in time to 1962, decades before the kids was even born. I believe it's going to follow the grandparents of Mike Hanlon. Where the film focused on the losers fighting the monster, Welcome to Derry focuses on earlier cycles of its feeding, the birth of its modern clown form, and the buried history that the 1980s Losers Clubs later stumbles into. So let's break it down. The novel's original mythos and the dual timelines are 58 and 85. The 1990s miniseries retelling was closely within that same time frame. The 2017 and 2019 Muschietti films rebooted the timeline, but it put the losers in the 80s and the 2010s. And now, Welcome to Derry will time travel us back to 1962 as a prequel inside the Muschietti film continuity. I personally like this because I think the Muschietti films from 2017 and 2019 were the best, and to expand on that is great for this lore. So let that take us right into the trailer and how they laid out the 1962 vibe fresh out the gate. From the set design, the clothes, all the way down to the music. It would have been real dope for them to put some Scatman Crothers in there, but you can't win them all. Derry, Maine mirrors the real town of Bangor, Maine, and we see the Bangor Chew on one of the buildings. And from monarch barrettes to the Masonic tile in the school hallway, even the time era establishment shots drop a few symbolic head notes for what's to come. We're introduced to a few characters along the way and shown a military presence in Derry before the vibe actually shifts on the trailer. So the trailer is pretty much establishing the Hanlon family's arrival to Derry. They let us know right away that Miss Hanlon notices a few hard to miss things about Derry, and then the vibe changes to show the darker side of the town via the racial tension, Shawshank, missing kids, Robert Gray, and the influence that its presence holds over the town. That darkness goes right into a group of kids investigating the disappearance of a kid named Matthew. We see them passing through the pillars, under the archway, below the keystone, and we'll talk about that symbolism later. We get more shots of a military base and we hear the name Halloran. You know, Dick Halloran from The Shining. We hear a tribesman detailing the disappearances and deaths in the town. We see the military digging for something, and it looks like they've pulled out an old-timey car with what looks like bullet holes in it. Inside, we see a few dead corpses with a rifle. We get a night shot of the kids, the hand of Pennywise, and some sort of meteor falling. Then that's when they turn up the visuals a bit, and we really get a look at how great the cinematography and the visual effects come together with some real dope shots of Pennywise. We got this crazy shot of the kids floating and this shot of the mist covering over the town. There's a few other heavy visuals as well. And I was wondering why this character right here had on gloves that look like Pennywise. Maybe it's a coincidence, maybe not, I don't know yet. But this joint actually looks like we're in for another dope installation to 2025's horror rampage. Not only does it look scary, but the trailer gives us some valuable clues to the hidden symbolism that I'm sure will be saturated throughout the series. Remember, this show is a prequel to the 2017 and 2019 films, and that means we're going to be diving into the background history of the Losers Clubs, the town of Derry, and the historical nature between it and the native tribes people. And judging by that meteor, we might even be getting some history on it. This trailer actually gives us a lot to talk about, so let's dive in. Now, I'm gonna keep it a beanbag. Welcome to Derry is definitely gonna serve as an adhesive that binds the Stephen King universe in a way that we all felt was there. I mean, now they're even gonna directly overlap a formative period in Dick Halloran's life, decades before he meets Danny Torrance at the Overlook Hotel in The Shining. That's major because this is one of the most important connective threads between two of Stephen King's most famous works. Now, many have theorized in the past that the Losers Club actually had the ability to shine, and the It novel kind of gives some credence to that idea. Now, the trailer doesn't give any clues towards that notion, but putting Halloran in this timeline does point to show us like a possible highlighting of Halloran's shining abilities and possibly some others, maybe the kids. It would be dope to get another mentor relationship like we saw with him and Danny. One thing that I find very interesting about the trailer is the native tribal presence along with the 1962 contrast, because that's something we haven't seen in any of the films. I mean, even in part 2 in 2019, they showed some natives, but they didn't actually have roles and speaking presences in the movie. We're talking 1962. During the Cold War, and this was the height of nuclear fear, segregation, racial tension, and extreme governmental secrecy. And the Native American influence is really at the heart of the entire It brand. Stephen King using a cosmic turtle in It and The Dark Tower is almost certainly inspired by the Native American Turtle Island cosmology and the grandmother spider deity. In the Stephen King mythos, the turtle Maturin and the spider It are primordial forces that existed long before the universe as we know it. The turtle is described as an ancient cosmic being who created the physical universe by vomiting it out. And that's a metaphor drawn from multiple indigenous creation myths where the earth rests upon a great turtle, often called Turtle Island. His shell supports reality itself and contains the sun's 28-day cycle around the 13 moons or months. Pennywise saying about how his victims always float down there is another nod to the cosmic waters above in that ancient cosmology, just like the Turtle Island and Maturin. The spider known as It, who created or adapted Pennywise the Dancing Clown, is Maturin's dark counterpart, and its true form, seen only as the deadlights, comes from the same pre-creation space. This is borrowed directly from the grandmother spider. She is the ancient intelligence who spun the world from threads of light. And this tracks because in the novel, it has eggs. And if the series is going to go into the history of it, I wonder if we'll see any egg or rebirth symbolism. Both of these beings come from the macroverse, and this is pulled directly from the Todash darkness, which is an endless void that spawns both divine and demonic entities. The Naught, or void, as in nautical or astronaut, the primordial water. So Maturin and It are twin archetypes pulled directly from the creation and unmaking balance found in the native cosmology. So let's look at this for a second. Long before the town of Derry existed, the native people of that region encountered It first. So their presence in the trailer sets the stage for all of this. In the novel, they describe how It fell from the sky in a ball of fire, landing on what became Derry's sewers and the barrens. That fall mirrors Luciferian descent, the light bearer turned devourer, or like the Nephilim in Hebrew mysticism. And we'll talk more about that symbolism as well because the trailer actually touches on that. So let's cook this for a second. If It came to Earth before human existence, then It had to be watching life crawl around in a world where everything survives by consuming something weaker. I mean, just to put it simple, It learned from observation. And to exist here means to feed, and to feed means to adapt to the emotional and the biochemical signatures of the plant's most dominant species. So when humans arrived and it pulled up on humans, it discovered that their fear releases a mixture of complex chemicals that alter the body's electromagnetic field and even its flavor. And this is why we see Pennywise the clown always salivating, because he can smell that fear from a mile away. And that makes fear and terror a rich energy source. So its feeding patterns become more about neurochemical farming and less about evil. I mean, that terror beefs up the nutrient content. So it's kind of like a mosquito preferring warm blood over cold blood because of the way that the warm blood carries oxygen. But the problem is, as a collective species, humans don't frighten that easily because we like to rationalize what we see. We try to figure out what we're actually looking at and understand it. Most animals just run away in fear, but humans, we're kind of harder to scare. Humans will actually fight back and in most cases start to hunt you. You know, humans is straight up turn the tables on that ass. One minute we're running from lions and the next minute we're wearing their furs with their heads on our shoulders like it ain't nothing.
This is beautiful. What is that, velvet?
So I'm sure that the natives who first encountered it fought back. Then you have humans also having the ability to shine, which makes it harder for it to feed. And how I know that humans have the ability to shine is because Halloran told Danny Torrance in The Shining that all humans can shine. It's just that some know how to do it better than others. So I'm sure over time, it found feeding more and more difficult. And to extract that right chemistry, it needed to create a form that the human's nervous system just couldn't ignore. Thus the creation of Pennywise the Dancing Clown. It's deep when you think about how it is an alien intelligence that's mimicking what it learned from Earth's food chain in the first place. But why Pennywise? Why look like a clown? And is Pennywise the first visual incarnation it chose to use? And if it has been here since before humans, could it also be responsible for other instances of strange presence like the Overlook Hotel? Perhaps that 27-year nap in Derry is just it showing up somewhere else. Across the Americas, tales of giant cannibals with pale skin and red hair echo through indigenous mythology. Could this have been its first attempt to arouse fear in humans? According to stories passed down through oral tradition, these beings were predators who hunted and devoured humans. Native tribes united against them, driving the red-haired giants into massive caves. They trapped them in with fire and smoke, and they actually used vision quest and other things of that nature to keep these creatures at bay. When early settlers came to those regions, they later uncovered mummified remains with reddish hair, fueling the speculation that the myth was real and had physical root. They even showed us something like this in the 2019 movie When the Losers Club goes down to its lair. You see a big skull there with red hair coming out of it. Giants with pale skin and red hair? Some people even believe the Nephilim look like clowns. The clown's white face and red nose resembled the Rakshasa. I know you remember the scene with Richie by the Paul Bunyan statue. That's one of the craziest scenes out of both movies. And we see that a focus has been made on the giant lumberjack once again. The Nephilim were said to be offspring of celestial beings and human women. And in ancient texts, the Nephilim were builders of early cities. They were credited with teaching metallurgy, architecture, and warfare. Paul Bunyan fills that same mythical role with the industrial age. With his axe, he can clear forests, level mountains, and carve rivers into the landscape. He's credited with creating the Great Lakes so that his blue ox Babe could drink. He dragged his axe in a snowstorm and carved out the Grand Canyon. So this is a connection to the Nephilim, but it's also directly connected to the logging riots in Derry. Let's go through the events real quick. After the land known as Derry was founded, the first settlers who arrived between 1740 and 1743 just simply vanished. From that point on, Derry's prosperity and slaughter became inseparable. Each era of progress was marked by a new feeding period for it. In the 1850s, the Kitchener Ironworks explosion turned Easter Sunday into a funeral. Witnesses reported seeing a clown handing out balloons amongst the machinery. Decades later, in 1879, the Silver Dollar Saloon erupted in a full shootout, and patrons described seeing a smiling stranger with silver dollar eyes who seemed to be enjoying everything. The pattern repeated in 1906 with hundreds of lumbermen hacking one another apart in a fog that covered the entire town. 2 years later, in 1908, came the Derry circus tragedy, when the town fair caught fire, killing some children and a local performer named Robert Bob Gray. His striped suit and grin became the template for Pennywise's chosen mask. But the problem that I have with this timeline is that witnesses reported seeing a clown at the ironworks explosion before the Derry circus tragedy. And that could be a result of the Muschietti work being slightly different from the novel, or it has been using different versions of ancient clown imagery. Let's look at this for a minute. The natives had been able to subdue it by way of rituals and spirit walking. However, when them foreign ships arrived with gunfire and the foreign law, the natives who had faced it and won were overwhelmed by a new kind of power. Ownership written on paper, sealed in courts, and enforced with steel. It sat back and watched the shamans who once challenged it being driven into silence, and in their place came magistrates and ministers dressed in ruffles and lace, speaking in the language of the majesty and decree. To it, these colonizers were a different type of predator that could mark out its opponent with terror, force, and illusions of order. It witnessed the fall of the indigenous by rule of the king or majesty, by the orders of the new judges or magistrate, majesty, and it poses as a jester. Magistrate, majesty, jester. It has a lair with eggs, gestation, or gesture. Gesture is to carry or perform, and in medieval courts, the jester was the only person whose performance could mock the majesty without punishment. The ruffled neck and cuffs of Pennywise is that forgotten uniform of the majesty jester inversion. Pennywise is able to shape reality just as the magician. The magistrate and the majesty speak words that change the climate of society and also shape reality. Robert Gray might be the human facial aesthetic and the maker of the Pennywise name, but the blueprint for the Nephilim clown was already in motion. And that's why they saw a clown at the ironworks before the Derry circus tragedy. So when you see Pennywise with the blood dripping from his ruffles, that shit hit different when you think about how the natives were taken down by men with powdered faces, ruffled collars, and wigs and capri pants. Its look comes directly from the European theatrical and ritual lineage that birthed the clown, the harlequin, and the jester. The judges and the clergymen of the 16th through the 18th centuries constantly borrowed from that language of costume, hierarchy, and the mask to protect authority and divine detachment. They didn't want to be anywhere near these peasants that they were judging, taking their money through taxes and unfair practices. The ruffled collar actually originated in Spanish and Elizabethan courts as a halo-like frame for the head. That white face powder, often made from toxic lead carbonate, symbolized purity and separation from labor or morality. The clown also paints his face pale to stand apart from the crowd. Europe's legal and noble classes turned the sacred fool's costume into a uniform of control and prestige. Now, this takes me right back to that entrance corridor in the Derry sewer system that I mentioned earlier. During the same centuries when the courts and the theaters started to share symbolism, Freemasonry emerged, and it drew from both the court symbolism and the theater symbolism. The early Masonic lodges were guilds of builders that adopted theatrical ceremonies to teach moral lessons. Their aprons, gloves, columns, and ritual drama was a deeper version of the Renaissance mystery plays. When the circus rose in the 18th and 19th centuries, its founders borrowed from these Masonic courtly vibes, with the striped tents, the checkerboard floors. The ringmaster's top hat with the gloves are directly pulled from Masonic officers, and the clown's white face and ruffles inverted the symbols of authority into parody. And that makes the circus pretty much a reflection of a Masonic ritual with sacred geometry, colors, and phrases that are used to draw in the poor and desperate that later became a way to attract families with children. That same Masonic resonance can be seen right here at the entrance of those sewers. You have the Masonic pillars, the grand archway, and the keystone. The children are being initiated, and they represent the 6 faces of the hexahedron or cube as they pass through the entrance. Even the losers had 7 until they lost Stanley, making it 6 losers who fought at the end. Even in the 2019 movie, the container that Mike stole from the natives was in the shape of a keystone, and that hexahedron can be found inside Metatron's cube, just like the tetrahedron. Both of those are 2 of the 5 platonic solids. We've seen it use the tetrahedron a few times in the movie with Eddie in the back of the well house, and after Richie's flashback with Paul Bunyan. We've also seen the cube used to hurt it before. The slingshot with the silver earring. That slingshot is in the shape of a Y, which is the center vantage point of the cube or hexahedron. So we have seen the essence of the cube being used against it before. The Y shape is also the cube. The cube is represented in this way symbolically in other shows and movies all over the place, even in Back to the Future, where we see the flux capacitor as the Y shape in its design. The slingshot is the Y shape, and we see it used against it. That archway takes on the look of a Masonic gate, and it, along with the Vesica Pisces symbology, represents a portal between 2 worlds. When the kids walk through, they enter a journey of each one of Derry's rebirthing periods and its feeding cycles. This is why somebody's always doing the history. We always have a historian in the group. I'm sure we'll get plenty of chances throughout the season to spot more of this symbolism, because each one of these periods represent another rebirth or a new set of its hunters. I can definitely say that this trailer is looking really good for the series. And let's just keep it a beanbag. It is one of those kind of works that needs a whole series to really get that story out anyway. I mean, they were never able to do it with one movie. I mean, they had 2 movies, a part 1 and part 2 in 2017 and 2019. And then they had a whole miniseries in 1990. And us finally getting it in a series in 2025 shows us that this story has always been ahead of its time. And I'm glad this is not another remake. So there's my breakdown for the Welcome to Derry trailer and the overall It lore. There's much more to talk about, but this was just a little something to get us ready for the series to jump off. And if you like this video, go ahead and tap that screen a couple times for me by hyping, liking, sharing. And if you're not subscribed yet, hopefully this will be the video to make you lock in. That's all for my video this evening. I'll catch you in the next one.